Welcome to the Bovis and Outdoor Chronicles. My name's Jared.
And my name's Garett.
We're two brothers who love the outdoors. We spend most of our money and all of our free time on our adventures. From working all week to playing all weekend, we find ourselves
surviving the week to live on the weekend.
Point your mic more at your mouth.
Oh, geez.
There you go.
So here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about today?
I would like to talk about, should you raise your kids in the outdoors? Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Bovis and Outdoor Chronicles.
Episode.
Be sure to check us out Instagram, TikTok, and as always, we will be surviving the week
to live on the weekends.
Well, that was good. That was a good episode.
Good. All right. Let's talk about it more in depth. Be real.
Be real. So the question is, should you raise your kids in the outdoors? Yes, you enjoy doing stuff in the outdoors. They would enjoy it too. Why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of factors and things we really have to consider because the outdoors is an industry that's changing. And in my mind, it's not necessarily changing for the better. It's becoming more of a rich man game. It's becoming more in order to be successful and compete, you have to drop some money.
Yeah. So how do you want to do this? Because I think we both agree that we're going to raise our kids in the outdoors because we're already like stuck with it.
Yeah. We got no other hobbies.
I'm not going to stop.
So maybe you do the pitch and I'll play devil's advocate a little bit and kind of.
All right. For me, all right. I'll try my best. So for me, like I mentioned, bringing my kids up in the outdoors when I have them. You just had your first one. But that's kind of why we started thinking about this. And
right, because your perspective on life changes. Like, all of a sudden, I'm going on these adventures. I'm not just thinking about me. I'm thinking about my other family members that maybe one day can go out on these adventures.
Yes. And I am, in talking with Dad and hearing how Dad had it when he was our age, doesn't even compare to how it is now.
Right.
I mean, this is like...
as far as like access and even availability of large animals. I mean, it used to be you could just go knock on doors and get stuff. And you can still do that, but it's become a lot more
there's
of
a lot
a commodity.
Big money in it. Yeah. There's a lot of big money in it. And could you go knock on doors and hunt upland game bird or maybe some waterfowl or geese in a field? Probably.
Right. Pretty easily.
Pretty easily, yeah. But let's say, hey, I want to, would you let me on your place? I'd like to chase deer. We're outfitted.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you know they're outfitted, those deer and those elk, it's a paycheck, and then it's...
right, and so you understand it, but it sucks. And we've had this discussion before. Mm-hmm. It sucks for the average guy, but... passing that on to generations, by the time my kid's my age, what's it going to be like?
How bad is it going to be?
So is it right to raise him doing an industry that I know is just going to get harder and harder, more and more expensive? Or should I teach him to play video games all day, and that way he's not spending all his money,
or maybe
puts
golf.
Money in the bank? Yeah, okay. That's probably a fair outside.
I feel like you pick video games because it's got a negative connotation to it.
Fair.
But pick some other hobby. I mean, golf is expensive as well. But maybe pick a better hobby like financial investing,
Right.
Stockbroker.
Should I
broker hobby.
Push my kids into financial investing to set them up better in life?
Well, that's a side subject, but yes, you should teach them good finances.
I'm going to teach them how to shoot the big buck.
Well, that's the issue, okay? And being able to shoot the big buck, I don't know if that's doable on public land like it was.
It's back in the most day. Definitely not.
And then what's it going to be like when my kid's 12? We take him for his first hunting season. It'll be like, it's a special draw everywhere now because the pressure on the public is so high. Because the pressure on the public is so high, that increases the demand for the private land. So to get on private land with an outfit or something, the price is going to go way up. So you can't afford it. Or, in my opinion, I'm not going to pay $15,000 to hunt a bull elk. Just not. And right now, I'm not saying you can't shoot a big one on public. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm doing is taking it and extrapolating what's it going to be like down the road.
Because from our experiences, what it was like for our dad when he was our age compared to now, it's just got more restrictive, more rules.
And it's caused us a lot of grief.
Anguish, yeah. Even within our lifetimes, with our hunting, throughout our hunting lifetimes, it's gotten worse. Less access.
Yeah, and
more regulations.
20 years we've been hunting. So, like I remember going before I could shoot, I would go with Dad and what it was like.
Right.
And you're a kid, so it's a lot more
everything seems larger, bigger.
But there was like we could do a lot of stuff that they've restricted or closed now. And I think not all those restrictions or closures are justified, but some of them are. Like, this keeps replaying in my head when we went up north, Dad and I, to try to find some deer, and there was more out-of-state people there than in-state people there. It was pressured to none else, and I felt bad for the animals.
And then also in that situation is there's rules where you have to stay on roads, but they weren't following it. They're driving
in that situation. Yeah.
Well, that goes down to the management of resources, right? If you make these rules and you don't have enough people to actually enforce them, the only people that are getting hurt are the people that are following the rules. Yes. So now time passes, there's more regulations, but unless you really kick up the enforcement, these problems are going to keep happening. So throughout generations, that same problem is going to be present and more prevalent.
Because more people keep coming to enjoy the outdoors here.
Correct.
It's tragedy of the commons.
Right.
So the question, and you're playing devil's advocate, should you raise your kid in the outdoors knowing that this is not going to get better?
Well, first off, I want to say that no. Number one, the outdoors is a huge safety risk. You don't know what's out there. There's barbed wire and stuff. So for me, it's not worth my kids taking that risk to put up with that much public pressure. You don't know these people from out of state. Firearms are dangerous.
I'll give you firearms are dangerous out of state, but I'm going to call you a nut for being afraid of barbed wire. Main reason is I have barbed wire at my house right now. In the back pasture, they keep the horses out.
And my kid has to stay inside.
But in your defense, your dog did split his head open on that barbed wire.
Well,
so maybe you have a irrational fear of barbed wire.
You have a kid. It's the most precious thing in your world now, and you're going to subject it to these hazards for what? For your enjoyment?
I think my job as a father is to case harden my son so he can battle life, because life's a struggle.
And you think you can do that through putting him in danger?
That's the only way to do it.
I don't know, man. I agree with this, but I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't know. For me, it's not worth fucking up my kid. I want to give him a life that I never had where he's constantly safe and doesn't have to worry about.
Well, I think the issue more for me is not a safety thing. The issue for me is, do I want to set my kid up to feel the anguish that we're feeling?
As what we love to do is diminishing.
Yeah. Throw them into a sport that is getting so much attention right now, whether it be through stuff like this.
Yeah, freaking podcasters. Can we... Yeah,
that just keep telling you to come to our state. Stay the hell out of our state. You're ruining it. But do you bring them up, you set them up, tell them about the stuff we did, and then when it's his time to go, it's like, oh no, this is your 1 acre chunk that you can set a stand on, and you have a tag to hunt this 1 acre chunk because there's 50 other people on this 50 acre parcel that have their 1 acre chunk with their stand. And you know, is it kind of like,
do you drive down the dirt road and you say, see that hill over there? Your dad and your grandpa, we shot a deer over there, but we can't now because we've lost access to it because it's outfitted now. See this valley? We used to hunt turkeys in here. Well, you can't now, but do you bring that to a kid? I mean, wouldn't that just damage their perspective of life, that like, this is a negative thing? Why do I want to get involved in this?
Well, it might be a self-fulfilling prophecy where they don't. You know, it's like, yeah, Dad, I like going out with you, but it's like not super fun anymore.
Yeah.
Like maybe when you were younger. because, your hands are so restricted. The other thing, too, not only pressure we're talking about, I think we should mention fires. And I have a bone to pick with some agencies. Now, I haven't done the research, so this could just be frivolous, but a lot of the stuff we've hunted has burned. And it burns to the point that it turns back into sagebrush hills. The trees are gone. Why can't we, I would volunteer. Why couldn't I sign up with National Forest, right? And say, hey, look, I want to volunteer my time, my resources. Can I get trees and I'll go replant this forest? And I'm not replanting it for me. I'm replanting it for my
generation
grandkids
to go on to hold.
Yes.
Well, you brought up the fire issue. That's a complex issue, right?
Well, even when I was a child, there's stuff we hunted that was so thick, and there's so many stories from our predecessors in there. And now it's all burned, gone.
Right.
And it does not hold the animals. They have no cover. It doesn't hold the water it used to. Like a wildfire changes the landscape. It's more drought heavy.
Doesn't hold the moisture.
It doesn't hold the moisture. The springs go dry.
You have to look at the type of forest, right? You have lodgepole pine. You can have a stand replacing fire, go through, burn everything, and come back up. Where we hunt, it's ponderosa. So those forests are adapted for low intensity fires where it clears out the underbrush. Well, due to fire management practice, that stuff didn't happen. So we have a buildup of these finer fuels. So now we have stand replacing fires where it just decimates the forest.
And to the average guy, what you're saying is the ponderosa forests were meant to be thinner and have grass and low brush, and the fire would go through quick and not burn the trees down.
Correct.
There's so much deadfall, and the forests have been not well managed,
right?
To where when a fire goes through, it sits there and actually cooks it to the point all the trees get killed, even the bacteria in the soil.
Right,
it's cooking it hot.
That's a huge thing that you're limiting is that soil. You kill your life in your soil. It takes years to get that going again. So sagebrush sagebrush even takes a while to get reestablished. But you have a fire burn through. You have species come. It's mainly invasive weeds, because they're used to disturbance is what they like.
Yeah, because they're opportunistic, if you will.
Correct. But it just takes time to build that soil. So not only you having these fires that are clearing these forests that shouldn't, you're clearing these forests, and then you're giving an opportunity for invasive, noxious weeds to come in and establish this area that previously wouldn't have, because it would have had cover because you just burned the grass and didn't burn the big tree.
Mm-hmm.
So, and climate change too, So
Fake news.
It's a very complex issue.
Fake news.
But from our perspective, it's got shittier. And so whatever,
from all ends, there's not one portion. Well, let me retract that. I think the BMAs is a very positive thing.
Right.
And I have a list of ideas I think that would improve it for everybody, the hunters and the landowners. But other than that, it seems like we're getting it from all ends. Forest Service, BLM, state, they're closing roads, closing access. You got private landowners closing access roads,
right.
A road that's corner hop their property for 40 years.
Gone,
all of a sudden they're
40 yards, and now they're like, no,
you can't cross that anymore. They stake it. Well, that closes all that forest off. And then the forest we can still hunt, or the land we can still hunt's burning,
right.
And then on top of that, we're having out-of-state pressure big time. We're having guided hunts on public land. We're finding guys that are getting guided on the public. It's just like one after another, after another, after another.
Why would I want to bring a kid up into that?
Okay, so rather than answering and saying my kid's going to be brought up in it because I'm not going to stop, I'm going to hold on until I'm
right,
till I'm dead. If I wasn't in the sport, maybe put me in those shoes. Would I want to start and bring my kid into it? Like one of your friends that's just kind of starting. That's difficult as well because I feel like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, you don't know.
You don't know.
You don't care.
You don't care.
So to a newbie coming in the sport, you don't necessarily know
how good it was.
So the only situation that you'd have to put yourself in is you know how good it was. Are you going to raise your kid in it knowing that it's just going to get worse?
So, man, you're really putting
the screws in.
Mm-hmm. Here's what I would say, and my mind has changed since we kind of decided to talk about this. I think it would be my responsibility to make that kid enjoy the outdoors the way they are now. And I'd be doing him a disservice if I was running my mouth
about how great
it was and how everybody's screwing us now. And that would give him a bad attitude about the outdoors. But ignorance is bliss. He knows nothing different. Let's make him enjoy what he can do.
So it's your role as a parent to block information from your child?
Yep.
What you're saying? Basically,
it'd be my role as a parent to not protect, but it would be to not be such a pessimist. Like, there's nothing I can do about it, right? I can let that eat me out inside and spoil my stuff, but when it comes to him, he doesn't know any different. He doesn't know.
It's still a big, grand adventure to him.
It's still a big, grand adventure to him. I mean, you got guys hunt out east. I'm complaining about our land shrieking out here.
Right.
And I can walk for 4 days and not.
Right.
You know, the other day I was hunting a chunk of land where it would have probably taken me 3 days, but I could have walked to another state and not crossed any private. There's nothing out there. There's no animals really out there, but I could have. So there's a large scale to it, and people out east still enjoy what they do on their little parcels and their stands.
Right.
You know?
So it's hard with the different perspective, because if you like the outdoors, you'll find the opportunity, but holding yourself accountable to say, I'm going to have a positive attitude about this, even though it's not what it once was, because I don't want to jade my kid's opinion. That's hard to do.
Very hard to do.
And so rather than doing that, couldn't you just push your kids into like sports? I mean, hunting is you and I both know it's a huge time commitment. Wouldn't your time better be spent pushing your kids towards sports, so social activities to where they're going out meeting friends versus going out being alone? And
well, us growing up, we did a lot of outdoor stuff, but it was never forced.
No. And that's one thing that our father did. It was like, I'm going out here. If you want to go, you don't have to.
Yep.
And I think that's huge with raising kids, is you don't want to, as soon as you make a kid do something, he doesn't want to do it.
No.
But if you give him the opportunity and let him choose.
I think there's some middle ground there.
What do you mean?
Like, I don't know if we would have gone hunting if Dad wasn't like, you're going to go hunting. So there's a little bit of force. Like, I don't think I would have been like...
As a kid, you're manipulated, right? That's
what I'm saying.
Happened.
You would have to manipulate them to go, but it's
and
not
you're manipulating
chore.
Your kids, and you're saying that this is a good thing to push your kids into?
Well, I think all parents do that. Whether you want to get them into sports, you want to get them into music, you want to get them into whatever, you push them that way. What I like about the outdoors that I don't think you can get from any of those others as well, I'm sure there's people on here that'll disagree with me, but is that connection to God, the connection to nature, the connection to like what it is to be alive.
You mean the PTSD from watching the life drain out of an animal's eyes?
I don't like to watch that. I think that's a weird thing to say.
Well, that's what you're subjecting your kid to. I mean,
yeah.
I was listening to a different podcast where he referenced fly fishing as a blood sport.
Yeah.
Because you're enjoying it at basically harming the fish. Well, to me, fly fishing isn't a blood sport.
No.
Hunting 100% is a blood sport. What you're going to do is you're going out and you're killing an animal.
There's something religious about that, though. There's something, maybe religious isn't the right term, spiritual about that. Because no matter what, for you to sustain yourself, you take the life from other things.
You can be disconnected from it. My kid can go to McDonald's and have a hamburger. He doesn't have to go out and watch the life drain out of something's eyes.
But I also think the state of this country is people being disconnected from it. We get so tied up in your job and school and doing all these stuff that's kind of superficial. Where I'm under, this paradigm that I would be way happier without all that stuff as long as I could provide food and shelter and warmth for my family.
It sounds like you got to go stake a claim, go off the grid.
Well, I honestly think that life's simpler. When you have to more worry about if you canned enough beans for the winter and not worry about what somebody said on Facebook or what this did or am I going to get to work on time? But I need to get up with my alarm. No. When you start living...
Life's simpler.
But
for the majority
more
of
enjoyable.
The majority of people, that doesn't work.
Because they've never done it or never given it a try.
Right.
I'd be shocked. No, I'm not saying like you have an outhouse and you got to like melt ice for water. Like
that's what it sounds like to me.
Comforts. No, there's some comforts, but and I think you see a lot of our generation doing that. There's this like whole homesteading fad where people are like
push away from society.
They get a remote job. They go buy some acreage. They get a few goats, a big garden, a milk cow. They raise chickens, and they raise their kids that way.
Sounds like some hillbillies. I don't have any interest in that. My kids are going to go to school. They're going to learn a skill, and they're going to live successful lives. They're not going to be no backwood country hillbillies like you want your kids to be.
What's a successful life?
Enough money to take care of daddy.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, we've talked, you need to provide your kid with a positive experience, whether it be through manipulation or through just a willingness to kind of take that burden on yourself and not talk about how great it once was.
Well, I think you can do that a little bit. Like you can talk about it. It's kind of like the myth, the legends. Like, think of Dad's huge deer,
right?
The one that's in the record book, right? Think of our kids, his grandkids, hearing that story.
Yeah, it'll be something,
right? The man, the myth, the legend. Like that's kind of that's even what draws me out there too. Is you never know when you're going to turn the corner of a tree or come up over a hill and this is your moment.
Well, that's more for big game, not necessarily birds or fishing or any of the outdoor things.
Most of my enjoyment is big game, like birds.
So you want to push your kid to have more enjoyment in big game?
No, I think you're trying to make me say something. I enjoy big game more because it's like a treasure hunt. All right. I don't think there's intense, incredible stories about a time you went duck hunting because it's not like you're trying hard to do something. You sit there.
You must not have gone duck hunting with me.
I
sit there. I have not moved at all. Like I quit breathing. I really get into it.
Maybe I just don't see a legend coming from like, yeah, we set the decoys. And then
you're going to get a lot of hate by waterfowl hunters right now.
I'm like, I'm not saying it's not fun.
Hey, if you want his address to send shit to, let me know. I'll give it to you. DM me. It's a hard question because the outdoors is a very broad thing.
Yeah, right? And what you want to get out of it. Do you want to fill your freezer? Maybe that's all you're into it for. Me, I like looking for... I'm trying to shoot a trophy for sure, but I enjoy all that comes from that. Now, I can see kind of how as you get older, people get away from big game because it's a little more intense.
Right.
If you're trophy hunting, it's not so intense if you just want to fill your freezer. Yeah, but I would almost equate if you're just going out and shooting the first doe or first animal you see just to fill your tank, to fill your freezer. That's about the same excitement with. Or not same excitement. That's about the same like treasure hunting it is if you go hunt pheasants or hunt ducks or hunt grouse. Where
I don't know. There's a melanistic pheasant out there. If I ever get one of those, it's going on the wall.
yeah, but that's like you're like playing the slot machine. You're like you're slinging it, and everyone's coming up, and there's one out there that if it flies by you, you'll get.
Aren't you playing that the exact same way in large game?
No, because I think you're looking. Large game is more like you have a pile of dirt, and you're digging through, and you're looking at each diamond, and you're trying to find your diamond. Right? Where pheasants, you're shooting every fucking pheasant.
I only shoot giant
although
pheasants.
I did hear about a guy, I think in Minnesota or Wisconsin, I was listening to, where their swan tag is like once in a lifetime draw. And so they scouted and like stalked swans months before season.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he shot one that was cool and unique. Where up here, to me, I'd like to shoot a swan, but like it's kind of like shooting a turkey.
I'm working on a plan, so I wouldn't say like shooting a turkey.
It not as far as the setup. What I'm saying is, if you see a swan, you're going to shoot the fucking swan. You're not going to look at it in binoculars like you would like study an antelope or study an elk.
There's a level of,
do I want this? Right. You're like, that's a swan. I want to get a swan.
You see a tom turkey.
That's
nice
a tom
beard.
Turkey. I'm going for the tom
you're
turkey.
Not like, he's got only 2 beards.
Yeah.
I was going for 3 beards.
Yeah, he's only about an inch and a half on his left side spur. No.
Maybe one day get like that.
I don't know if I'd ever be
not.
like, especially with how many turkey tags you can get.
Right.
And so that what I enjoy out of ducks and pheasants is it's a different excitement. It's kind of like a video game.
Right.
Excitement where it's like the birds are coming. Oh, here we go. Boom, 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 boom. Oh shit, you shot good. Oh yeah, the dogs do their thing great.
Right.
Or you're walking, pheasant scares the shit out of you. Cat
More
goes,
fast
boom,
action.
you get it. More fast action. That's fun.
So,
but it's not a like I'm being stealthy. I'm like, in the
you're
woods.
You're not like really stalking something.
No,
necessarily.
There's
But
no stalking. Yeah.
Even with tree stands, there's not necessarily a lot of stalking because you're more of an ambush predator in that sense.
But there is with tree stands. It's so broad. People do it all different ways. But the guys who are trophy hunting have their cameras up. They're looking for that diamond that they might have saw on a camera, or they know, like that tree stand is. It's no different than if there's an area where they go through and you get up there before light and you sit on the ground and wait. That same excitement is there.
But with kids, they like fast action. So you take your kid out and you're going to cause him to walk miles to look for this diamond. He's not going to enjoy that. Why would you subject your kid to walking and walking for no reward?
I'm tired of this walking and looking.
Yeah, can we go ahead and explain on that saying there?
It must have been my first year hunting. I think it was. And actually it was my second year. Maybe it's my second year because I didn't shoot a deer my first year.
Must have been second, I think.
And how we had hunted a lot was kind of off the road my first year, where we drive around, you'd see a deer and we try to put a stock on it. Right. So first or second year, whatever it was, Dad's like, all right, we're actually going to get out and walk. And he took me on a long walk. Now it wouldn't be a long walk,
but back then,
when I was little, it was a long walk. And I remember, I don't know, I wasn't like throwing a fit. Like,
you were throwing a fit.
I wasn't like throwing a tantrum though, like being loud.
Screaming, yeah.
Anything like that.
You were frustrated.
Yeah, because we were walking and seeing no deer. And he stops and he's looking. And I go, Dad, I'm tired of this walking and looking. When are we going to hunt?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like 3 more steps. We jumped a bunch of does. And he's like, oh, there could have been a buck in there. You never know. And back then I'm like, yeah,
whatever, Dad.
But now, like when I take Holly out, she's like walking behind me. And I'm like, there's a bunch of does. She's like, whatever. Even with Cameron, like those does start spooking. I'm like, there's a buck with them. I feel like there's a buck with them. And then that buck popped out. He shot. So going from that, but back to the walking and looking. you have to be very careful with your kids when you do that because you can burn them out.
Yeah.
Just like I wouldn't take.
I mean, it's a lot of work, right? So you're going to take your kid out and you're going to make him work and probably not going to see anything, especially if he goes with you because you're so picky. You'll be like, oh, he's only got 6 points on one side. I was going for 7.
Picky. I'm not that picky.
And so, like, why would you want to subject your kid to that? That just doesn't make sense. Why would we want to engage them in something where it's more rewarding for them?
I think the biggest reward is when you get a give me buck. I'll reel that back. If you've been hunting all year, hard, putting a ton of effort in, and you finally get that deer or the elk or whatever, your melanistic pheasant, that reward is hard to describe that you feel inside. Like when I shot the mountain goat, right?
Right.
But to get to that point where you will struggle that much for something,
you have to have enjoyment beforehand.
You have to build that foundation. It's just like we've had people ask us to take them hunting and do stuff with them. And at first, yeah, sure. And now when people ask me, I'm like, yeah, we can go. And this isn't to be offensive, but what is your level? What is your ideal trip? Because a lot of times we go to do stuff and people can't keep up.
Right.
It's too much for them. And then they don't have fun. And so if you know going into it, hey, this is, we're not going to go on long walks. He's not done, or she's not done so much, whatever. We can kind of plan that way. And that's how I would do it with your kid as well. You got to.
The same way you do it with your wife.
Yeah. I mean, you don't go, hey, do you want to go hunting? They're like, yeah, okay, we're doing a 7-day backcountry hunt. You need to pack food for 7 days, and it's going to be below zero and miserable. Yeah, you're going to really enjoy it.
I mean, there's a balance there because back when Sarah and I first started dating, she didn't hunt at all. I was a big hunter, and I'm like, I want her to like hunting. I want her to like hunting. So I drove around, did a lot of scouting, and found a ranch, and there was turkeys everywhere. And that was back when I had balls, and I went up and knocked on like 4 doors, and I finally got a yes. Hell yeah. Well, I remember like praying to God before we went. I go, please let this be a hunt, because I don't want her to just go out there and shoot something and see it die, because the real enjoyment comes from struggling and then getting that one. And you're like, oh my God, I did it. You go out and shoot one, and you'd be like,
It's like shooting prairie dogs.
Yeah, like killing an animal is not really the big thing. It's like, it's the hunt. So before we went, I prayed, please let it be a hunt. Please let it be a hunt. We go out to this private ranch. There's not a fucking turkey anywhere. And she didn't get a turkey her first year.
I remember that. You guys walked and walked and walked.
And I blame myself for praying that it would be difficult. But it took a couple of years for me to finally get her to seal the deal on a turkey. And I don't know. I think that skill was wrong with enjoyment. I think it wasn't quite right. I think she put in way more work than it was actually worth it.
There's a balance.
So trying to find that sweet spot and explain that to a kid, it's hard.
And also, I think you need to meet them with a lot of excitement.
Right.
Like if that's a buck,
it's the biggest buck you've seen.
It's the biggest buck. Oh man, that's a freaking holy shit! Get down! Whoa. Try not to get them too excited to where they miss. But don't get out and go, well, if you want to shoot it, you can. Yeah. There's 4 others over there.
We've gone with some people that are like, man, do you want it? Are you sure you want it? Mm-hmm. And it's like, if it's a kid, you should jack them
Even
up.
For me.
Right.
If like we're hunting together and I'm like, oh shit, there's a buck. I get him on my scope and I'm like, is he a shooter? And you're like, nah, if you want to. Yeah. I'm like, I don't think I want to.
Right.
But if I look over at you and you're throwing your scope up on him, it's like,
it's go time.
Yeah, it's go time.
So that's a hard balance, especially with kids in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So after you take your kid, you make him antisocial because you force him in the woods. You make him.
Why does he have to be antisocial?
Because you're in the woods. You don't want to see people. What do you see when you see someone in the woods?
Me?
What the hell is that guy doing out here? Get out of here. What does your kid pick up on? I don't like people.
That's true. But maybe that's what'll change is this new generation will be all techie and everyone talking and you'll take your friends. It'll be a very social event.
I think a lot of people are like that. I just think we are not.
Yeah, it's true. You're probably right.
But, okay, so you take your kid out, you brainwash him. The other part of this you haven't even considered is the public perception. Hunting is kind of frowned upon by a big fraction of society. Like, you can even be seen with, like, the furs and I don't want to say PETA because I think they're kind of extreme, but a lot of people are like, why would we do this when we have these systems in place where we can harvest animals that we raise? Why do you want to go out in the woods and make something suffer and die? And then why do you want to subject your kid to that, to your kid's a killer? Why would you want people to have a public perception that your kid likes to kill things?
I don't think you do. I think you're having a hard time playing devil's advocate. That's what I think. I don't think the public perception of your kid being a killer is that.
I think there's definitely public perceptions change of hunting in the last 20 years. Because think of it, you used to strap your animal as high as you could, blood running down, people give you a thumbs up. And now a lot of people, right.
Yeah.
So do you want to wish that on your kid to be discriminated against?
Well, I don't think you'd be discriminated against. I think there's a way to do it respectfully. But if I shot something big enough, I'd drop the tailgate and drive around town still. You'll get some, I mean, even heading back, we'll prop our horns up. We won't strap it on the hood, but I think the people that are adamantly against killing animals are crazy. So I'm not going to try to change their mind here. The ones that you don't want to do is convert somebody that's in the middle one way or the other, right? So you don't want to have your dead animal all strewn out in your front yard, and if your neighbors don't like it, they're going to have a bad taste of hunters.
Right.
What's weird to me, though, is hunting's got such a bad rap, but what if you like went and caught a bunch of salmon and you were like butchering them in your driveway? I don't feel like that would get much hate.
Some people wouldn't like it, but also think of a salmon. It's typically you catch them when they're spawning, when they're at the end of life anyways.
Yeah, but the people that are like, don't kill salmon, don't care. Or don't take that into effect.
Maybe we're just not on the right social pages to get that part of.
I just think there's a different, when people feel like it's a pet or could be a pet and they're soft and furry.
Right.
It's a little different.
So what you're saying is there's not enough Disney movies about fish and salmon because we've seen Bambi, we've seen Fox and the Hound.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that kids are little sponges and they absorb what they're around. And so by pushing your kid into an industry where you know it's just going to be rough, I think that's a selfish thing for you to do.
Yeah, probably, maybe so.
Because you're not thinking about your kid's best interest. You're thinking about, I want enjoyment.
I'm going to disagree there. I will agree that there's some selfishness to it because I enjoy it, so that's what they're going to do. But as far as negative to my kid, I don't think it's negative to show my kid how to get his own food. You know, I don't think it's negative health-wise either. I think that's probably some of the healthiest meat and protein.
If it's not infested with some kind of chronic wasting disease or other kind of disease.
Or pump full of chemicals at the supermarket to stay red.
Food that's processed and inspected by the USDA.
Don't trust the USDA. Don't trust any.
Oh, here we go.
The food
go get
pyramid.
Your tinfoil hat on. The moon landing didn't happen.
Yeah, you need to talk to Holly about that.
Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is nutritionally, I think the best diet you could have is you have a home garden and you either raise your own livestock or you hunt. And I think you'd be surprised how healthy you are, as long as you're not supplementing with Cheetos and all the processed, not to...
Why did you shout out Cheetos? What do you got against Cheetos?
I just was thinking how unnatural Cheetos are.
They're delicious, though.
They are delicious, but like potato chips, I get it.
Yeah, potato
You
slices.
slice and fry it. What the fuck is a Cheeto? You can't tell me that, you're not getting, your guts aren't like, what the fuck is this? So, yeah, I think you're raising your kids in the outdoors, and your goal as a father, and because we're both men, but as a parent, is to show your kid how cool the outdoors can be, even if it's a lot diminished from what it was when we started.
I think that's a selfish approach. I think you're just doing that so you can enjoy it.
I think there's some A and there's some B.
And then, so this past weekend, I took my wife and the baby out bird hunting.
Selfish.
It was selfish. Like, what enjoyment did that baby have from that? Well, he likes being outside, but also it's like, I want this what I want my family to do. So yeah, it's selfish, but I also think that there's skills that you obtain by doing that, by going out, by walking, by being in the weather. I think that's even good for your immune system at that young age to get a little bit hot, get a little bit cold. But of course, the baby's wearing headphones, right? We don't want to damage his hearing. The wife was carrying the baby, and he started to fuss, and he knocked his headphones off. So she came back to me, and she's like, hey, can you put his headphones on? So I bent down, picked up his headphones, and I'm putting them on his little ears. And the dogs are still working, and just then, a big old sage grouse flew out. And I throw my gun up, and oh, man, this sucker's dead. Don't shoot. He doesn't have his ear protection on. So I put my gun down, and that sucker flew. Like, it wasn't a mile, but it felt like a mile. Like, there's no way I was finding that bird again. And so at that point, it was like, God damn it, I came out here to get some shit done. So there's a level of frustration within me. And then it was like, well, dial it back. You need to make this a good experience for, number one, your wife.
Yeah. And
then number two, your baby. You right? You want to make this experience good. So it's not necessarily about being the most successful, but it's about setting up a nice experience for the people you go with. And that's...
So they'll go again.
It was hard.
Yeah.
Because on the way back to the truck, I wanted to just be like, what the fuck? Jesus Christ. Put the headphones on the baby. I should have had that
grouse. Do your freaking job.
Right.
Come
on. But it wasn't that. It was
Yeah.
It's a level of balance. But why they're out there, was that just a selfish reason? I mean, I got to enjoy the day with my family, but was it selfish to make them go?
Yeah, I'd say yeah. But not necessarily negatively. I think it's good for him to get out. I think it's good. Holly has said this. I mean, this was before we got married, but she said it after we got married too. Especially because her family will ask sometimes, how come Jared isn't with you all the time? Because I'll be out doing stuff and she'll do other stuff on the weekend. And she said, number one, can you imagine me with a guy that hung on my arm all the time and drive me nuts? But number two...
INDEPEND.
Number two is Jared needs to go. Because that's what keeps him... It like feeds his soul. If he stays cooped up too long, it's not good for him.
Right. You and I both work so we can go out and do things. We don't work to really have a nice house.
No.
I mean, it's nice. It's nice to have a nice house, but it's not like our priority. What gets us up in the morning to go out to the grind is the fact that we can afford to go out where life's simple.
So simple. Just the other weekend, I went out by myself. You had stuff to work on for school, I think, and so I went out by myself. I didn't even have the dog because it was hot and I didn't want to leave him in the truck. And I was chasing antelope with my bow. And it was just me. And at night, the cold wind. During the day, the hot sun, the hard dirt, the antelope, the sagebrush, the bugs, the cactus.
That doesn't sound like a healthy environment to raise a kid.
And it was so peaceful and so simple. What did I have to worry about? only thing that was really on my mind is I had to be back in town for a family get together later that night. But I had all day, and it was like, and you've hunted with me before. I really get into it, and if there's a big buck or there's something,
Right.
I'm like, but I was out there, and it was weird. It's like something flipped with me where like I didn't have to. Well, in bow hunting antelope, you can't push it.
Right.
So maybe it forced me. Maybe it wasn't a switch. It just I was
like
forced.
A realistic standard for I can't run 30 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
I should probably just play it conservatively to get a shot with my bow.
So I would just sit out there with those antelope and watch them and just relax and wait for a moment and try here. And if it didn't work, I'd sit and wait some more. And it just was like my biggest worry was what direction the wind was.
Yeah. Calming.
It's calming. You know what I mean? And even when I get back, it's like I'm rejuvenated. But I just think to not be able to give your kid that opportunity to feel that would be a disservice to him. And I don't know how many other places you can do that. I mean, I'm sure you could go for a hike and hit that same kind of euphoria, and not have to be trying to kill something.
Trying to murder something.
Murder is humans.
No.
Trying to kill something. But yeah, it was just, I felt like I was doing my part,
In the system. Doing your part in the system.
Yeah.
All right. So, one thing we haven't talked about that we need to talk about. Kids cost a lot of money.
Yes.
And now you're going to bring kids and you're going to push them into this sport.
Yep.
And how are you going to pay for it? And that just going to put a strain, an unnecessary hobby that we know costs a lot.
That's just what I do.
Is that fair to your family that you're just going to put a strain because that's what you do?
I don't know. I think traveling sports is probably just as expensive. So pick your poison. Kids are expensive. To say I don't want to spend money on my kid, so I'll keep him out of the outdoors, thinks pretty.
I know, but as time goes on, hunting's going to get more expensive. It's going to be more exclusive.
Yep.
And you're going to introduce your kid to something that's not necessarily a viable financial option for him in the future.
It might be.
I mean, each kid has his own ability, right? But what if you teach your kid, okay, live this lifestyle, this taste of freedom, but based on your life skills, you can't actually do it because I set you up for failure because I taught you a very expensive sport.
I think you're assuming a lot of things. Number one, I don't think you're setting your kid up for failure to teach him about the outdoors. I think you set him up for success. If it's something he's so addicted to and he can't quite scratch that itch in this state, he might move or she might move. And that would be I could see my kids wanting to move to like Alaska.
So now you just freedom. Drove your family apart.
Yeah, that would suck. But I'm not doing that. I mean, we're what effing into the future. So
right. Well, I got a kid. You don't have a kid, so we're playing the what if game. And it's for me. I'm having a hard time playing devil's advocate because I think the complete opposite way. So
I think you're doing a pretty good job.
Trying to get that side is hard for me. So I would like to bring someone on that maybe thinks like that. And maybe there's more
something we're not thinking
about. But as far as I go, I feel like the food is just so much healthier for you. The activity of hunting is healthier for you.
Yeah.
The one part that it's not healthy for is your wallet.
Everything healthy costs more.
Yeah, there you go.
About it that way.
Hashtag organic.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more organic.
Yeah.
There's not.
Right. And think about, maybe this is a little too philosophical or deep, but you eat a cheeseburger from the local fast food chain. That cow lived its life in, let's do a chicken. A chicken would be even a better example, right? It's bred.
It's genetically modified,
right.
to be killed at like 8 months, 9 months old.
Right.
Because if they live any longer, they grow too fast, it breaks their
can't.
bones, and they
Right.
suffocate.
Right.
So you're eating a genetically modified chicken that's killed essentially as a baby. They're not like full
Right.
grown. They're not done growing.
Right.
Right.
So, morally, is it more right to try to kill and harvest an animal that was free its whole life rather than to eat a sick experiment that was in a lab? Or is it more morally right to eat the sick experiment because animals that are in the wild can be in the wild?
I think there's this weird distinction we make between the wild and the city, or the wild and civilization. And really, everything is the wild. It's just different, right? So the town is still full of animals and critters that have adapted, that live in it.
They're eating the cats.
They're eating
They're
the
eating
dogs.
the dogs.
But that being said, I don't think there's much different from a deer out in the hills and like a pigeon that lives in town. They've adapted to live in their situations, but I don't think that's like a tame pigeon. I'm not saying you eat pigeons, but then you switch over to like the meat industry, where you have these chickens raised in buildings and they never see really sunlight except through the windows.
Even calling the range-free chicken, that's a very specific. That's like the chicken could walk around for like in a one by one square, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at, when you say range-free, you think, oh, this chicken was free; it could run wherever it wants. No,
because
definitely,
if it did, it would get killed and eaten.
Right.
But look at a sharp-tailed grouse now.
Right.
They're free. That's free range.
Yeah.
Right. Look at a pheasant. Look at ducks. They are migrating clear up in the Arctic, clear down to Mexico, and beyond. That's free range. Now tell me what's morally better to. I mean,
okay. First off, you just told me like to eat pigeons, but I have to bring.
I would try one. I feel like they taste similar to doves.
Pigeons kind of have a sad story, right?
They do.
So you brought them over here. We domesticated them because we used them for messaging. And then, we figured out via email is a lot better than via messenger pigeon. And so now we just like let them go. Now they inhabit the cities, and we're like, these are fucking gross ass birds, dumb ass birds. But it was created by
us.
Okay, sorry. Back to your. Where were you at?
I'm just talking about the difference between kind of the meat industry product versus you going out and harvesting an animal. What's more ethical? I'm not saying hamburger's not ethical. I'm not saying don't buy your steaks at the store, pork chop. I buy the steaks and pork chops at the store. But to say the deer I harvest is evil or there's something bad about it, it's like it's
less evil.
Yeah, it's no different than Mr. McGovern said on one of our episodes last season, going out and picking a tomato in your garden, kind of. Except this is more like foraging mushrooms in the wild, right?
Right.
Where you're out there and that's a food source and you can take that. And there is something special about taking that animal's life because then that's keeping you alive.
So, coming full circle, but teaching that to your kids.
Yeah.
Teaching your kids where your food comes from. Yeah, we can go get a burger at McDonald's, but understand that the meat doesn't come from the store. I mean, not yet. They're not quite growing it at that volume yet with the the grown meat. But there's such a huge disconnect in our food system from where our food comes from to where it's mouth. So I think it's important to instill in your kids that, hey, something died to provide you the ability to go on.
There's a lot of countries in the world, there's some first world countries like us, and they get so disconnected from
what life is.
Look at a third world country where they're like buying gasoline at the market to run their flour mill, and any animal that gets close enough to their camp, they're killing and eating, because it's like, thank God this animal wandered in. Now we can have dinner for the night. You know?
So teaching your kids the importance of that, but also not making them barbaric.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to push them too far to where they want to
eat the cats and eat the dogs.
No, more like buy a cabin off grid in Alaska and not talk to anybody.
Right.
You know?
So it's a hard balance.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I've always wanted to raise my kids in the outdoors. Having a kid now, it makes more sense of how I'm going to do it. And how you do it is you just take them with you. Everywhere you go, you bring them. And you also try to present that positive attitude that this is a good experience. Even though in your mind, you'd be like, man, freaking hunting sucked today. To that kid, you'd be like, this was a great experience. And it's maybe easier with bird hunting because it's a lot more fast action. You're walking, then all of a sudden, a bird flies up, versus I've walked 6 miles and I've seen 7 deer, but none of them are big enough for Uncle Jared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think with your kid, it's all about getting them into it, letting them know what it provides for them.
And then working on that endurance. Where they go, I'll endure this much discomfort to get this.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. So next time I go, I'll endure this much to get that again. And then all of a sudden you're addicted and you're like us.
For the outdoors, but also within life, because everything in life takes work, delayed gratification. Yep. And that's one skill I think with hunting or the outdoors that it teaches you is the more, like, I'm not going to say, some people go out the first time, shoot a dandy, right?
Or pay a bunch of money.
Right. But to be able to teach your kid that, like, if you put the work in, eventually it'll happen for you. If you jig this jig for 3 hours, eventually you'll have a fish bite it. And I think that skill just can go towards so many other things, that delayed gratification. If you put the work in now, eventually it'll lead to something grand.
Agreed.
And so maybe I need to record this episode and then play it back right before I want to go on a long hike. It'll be worth it.
Get you worked up.
It'll be worth it in the end.
But I think we've concluded that, you're going to raise your kids in the outdoors, but you got to be careful how you do it.
Yep.
That would be my synopsis of tonight.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to the Bovason Outdoor Chronicles.
Check us out on YouTube.
Tube.
What did you say?
Tube. I was doing like the emphasis. Like you.
Check us out on YouTube.
There you go.
TikTok.
On the clock.
Insta.
Gram.
On the slam.
Jared's starting his rap career.
I am.
So give us some up-likes if he's
also looking for hip-hop names. So
right now we have J Dizzle
and
Toad Ass.
The White Fuzz.
The White Fuzz.
Toad Ass. The Fat Toad.
The Fat Toad.
That's the one I like the most. Yo, it's the Fat Toad.
I'm not in love with it. But as normal, we will be surviving the week
and living on the weekends.